Today, we're going to uncover one of the biggest mysteries of the 21st century by unmasking the predictions of 5 men who predicted Bitcoin more than 5 decades before it was even created. So in doing this little exercise today, we're going to answer some really important questions like, who is Satoshi Nakamoto? Is Bitcoin the 5th technological revolution, or is it bigger than that? And thirdly, are you really early to Bitcoin, or are you actually much earlier than you can even imagine? So let's begin to unravel this mystery by going back in time to 1973, exactly 50 years ago, and listen to these prophetic predictions by the one and the only Buckminster Fuller.
Because now I'll have to talk about something which will be one of the very big new realizations by 2000 AD, which will be a realistic scientific accounting system of what is wealth.
There you have it. I believe that's a 1960s interview of the one and the only Buckminster Fuller, where he essentially predicts Bitcoin, okay? Energy money. He says wealth is energy, and by the year 2000, we will have a real scientific accounting system of what wealth is, okay? And so for a 1960s prediction, he nearly nails exactly what Bitcoin is, and he nearly nails the time frame, which is amazing. But of course, Buckminster Fuller is full of many great ideas. So he wrote these 30 different books on all sorts of different topics such as science, inventions, the future, governance, all sorts of things. The guy was really a polymath before that term was actually popular. He specialized in all sorts of different topics and had a deep knowledge in lots of these different topics. We can see he was an architect, he was a writer, a designer, an inventor, a philosopher, a futurist, and he's even a systems theorist. I don't even know what that is, but this dude is truly a bookworm, and he was one of the first people to predict Bitcoin. Buckminster Fuller was an absolute visionary, but he was not the only visionary in the 1920s who saw a future where an energy-backed system would actually emerge that properly reflected our wealth. I want to take you to a 1921 prediction by the one and the only Henry Ford in this newspaper article. You guys can see what it says. It says Ford predicted that an energy-backed money would actually replace gold and solve wars. That were his exact words. So another amazing quote from Henry Ford that he released in this New York Times article in 1921 was, he said, the essential evil of gold in its relation to war is the fact that it can be controlled. Break the control and you stop war. Ford also said that this energy currency could be issued only to a certain definite amount and for a specific purpose. He also says that under the energy currency system, the standard would be a certain amount of energy exerted for 1 hour that would be equal to $1. So he's saying every unit of energy would actually reflect a unit of money, okay? That's essentially saying that you can't print new currency units out of thin air. This is a proof of work backed system. And this is something that the 5th person we're going to discuss today also discusses in detail before the 1900s. But it's worth noting that Henry Ford wasn't just a visionary when it came to this prediction about Bitcoin in 1921. Again, that's 102 years ago. That's enormous. But he also revolutionized technology in other ways. He was actually the driver of the 4th industrial revolution. He created the automobile and the combustion engine just after we found oil as an energy source in those late 1800s. And of course, you can see what we did with that oil. We created engines. We put those engines in planes, in cars. We put them everywhere. So Henry Ford revolutionized technology, not only in the economic sense with his ideas and theories about energy currency, but also in the things that we actually used day to day. Henry Ford is even famous for this amazing quote. I love it. He says, if I had asked the people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, which is absolutely prophetic. And it's nearly as prophetic as the next interview I'm about to play for you guys. This one comes from 1984, where the one and the only Frederick Hayek says exactly this.
That we should ever have a good money again before we take the thing out of the hands of government. Then we can't take them violently out of the hands of government. All we can do is, by some sly roundabout way, introduce something they can't stop.
Hayek essentially predicts Bitcoin, okay? That's exactly what Bitcoin is. It's a sly, roundabout way. And Hayek is obviously famous for winning the Nobel Prize in economics in 1974. He's a very well-respected Austrian. He even wrote the phenomenal book, I believe it's called The Road to Serfdom. I highly recommend everybody go and read that puppy. It's phenomenal. It's a very short read. And he's also famous for a few of these other great quotes. Here he says, "I do not think it is an exaggeration to say history is largely a history of inflation. Usually inflation's engineered by governments for the gain of governments." And he also says in another great quote, "If socialists understood economics, they wouldn't be socialists." So again, I want to drop these quotes in here from these famous people who predicted Bitcoin, because it's going to leave us clues to where exactly Bitcoin is going to lead us. And it might give us a couple of clues of who Satoshi Nakamoto actually is. Obviously, Frederick Hayek is hugely respected, and there's actually a list here that I found online that shows the top 10 ranked Nobel Prize winning economists. And I want to point your attention to number 1 on that list, John F. Nash. We're going to revisit John Nash a little bit later on into today's interview, because I think he is potentially a smoky wildcard to be Satoshi. Nobody gives John Nash credit. Everybody thinks of the familiar faces, but I'm going to make a case for why I believe Satoshi is Nash a little bit later on into today's video. I just wanted to show you that Nash is number 1 on the most respected Nobel Prize winning economists, and Frederick Hayek there is number 7. Okay, so again, this just shows how highly people think of John Nash. So let's move on a little bit further and look at another Austrian economist. We're talking about another Austrian economist, and this time we're talking about Milton Friedman, and I want to play you an interview from 1999. That was 3 years after I was born.
That the internet is going to be one of the major forces for reducing the role of government. And the one thing that's missing, but that will soon be developed, is a reliable e-cash, a method whereby on the internet you can transfer funds from A to B without A knowing B or B knowing A. The way in which I can take a $20 bill and hand it over to you, and there's no record of where it came from. And you may get that without knowing who I am.
Now, I actually think that 1999 prediction by Friedman is one of the closest ones that actually resembles what Bitcoin is. Think about it, it's a reliable, anonymous e-cash, and it could shrink the size of governments into the future. Brilliant prediction. If you don't know who Friedman is, you've probably heard of one of his most famous quotes.
Because we are automatically shoved into higher brackets by the effect of inflation. A neat trick. Taxation without representation.
That's actually one of my favorites. Inflation is taxation without legislation. That's exactly what it is. And another little hint I'm going to drop for you guys, Friedman hated the establishment, okay? This is a common theme amongst, Ford, Nikola Tesla, who of course is on the thumbnail of today's video, who is already unmasked, Frederick Hayek, and the next book or people we're going to look at next. They all hate the establishment. They all understand technology, and they all predicted energy money, okay? Very interesting little theme there, but we're going to come back to that in a minute, but I just wanted to point out how revolutionary Friedman really was. He was the founder of this idea called monetarism, okay? It's a little bit difficult to explain, but essentially he believes inflation is caused by central bank money printing. Now, here's a couple of his great quotes here. Inflation is a monetary phenomenon. It is made by or stopped by the central bank. He is also responsible for the amazing quote, inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. And it's worth noting, Friedman was pushing back against all the Keynesianism that was happening in the 1900s, okay? All of your famous economists were influenced and brainwashed by Keynesian economics. But it was only the Austrians like Friedman and Hayek who actually predicted a digital currency into the future. There's another little hint for who I believe Satoshi could be. I don't think he could be a Keynesian, okay? It's pretty apparent that the Austrians were the only ones who've actually predicted a potential digital currency in the future that's essentially backed with real wealth and real energy, okay? But let's move on to another 1990s prediction. We're going to come back to Satoshi a little bit later on in today's video, but I want to explore a quote from my favorite book, and that is The Sovereign Individual, because in 1997, 1 year after I was born, they predicted this. They predicted that we'd see a new form of digital money, and they said it would be anonymous, unique, verifiable, and this money will accommodate the largest transactions as well as the smallest, because it will be divisible into the tiniest fraction of value. It will be tradable at a keystroke in a multi-trillion-dollar wholesale market without borders. That's exactly what Bitcoin is. This is the closest prediction about what Bitcoin is from all of the predictions we have seen so far, and there is a good reason why it is my favorite book, because in 1997, they didn't only predict Bitcoin, okay? They predicted everything that we see in the world today in the digital age. We can see here they predicted the metaverse, digital currency, e-commerce, remote work, rising income inequality. That is a big one that we're going to explore in next week's deep dive of the fourth turning. We're going to come back to that, but they also predicted digital banking, internet via mobile phones. This was a huge one because in 1997, we didn't even call the internet. We called it the World Wide Web, okay? And they were predicting all sorts of amazing technologies that the World Wide Web would actually create, okay? They predicted face-to-face Zoom and video calls like I'm currently on right now talking to you guys. They predicted all of it before the smartphone was even created. Absolutely unbelievable, and no surprise that they predicted Bitcoin. And one of the bigger predictions that I really want to kind of double click on that the sovereign individual made was the rise of digital nomads is actually one of the fastest growing trends in the world. Today, there's 35 million digital nomads. And I believe in 2017, there was only like 4 or 5 million. So every year it's growing by like 40 or 50%. It is an exponential trend and it is growing nearly as fast as Bitcoin. It's absolutely unbelievable. And they have a number of great quotes that I want to quickly read for you guys. They say in the book here that cyberspace is the ultimate offshore jurisdiction, an economy with no taxes, Bermuda in the sky with diamonds. When this greatest tax haven of all is fully open for business, all funds will essentially be offshore funds at the discretion of their owner. This will have cascading consequences. The state has grown used to treating its taxpayers as a farmer treats his cows, keeping them in a field to be milked. Soon, those cows will have wings. That is one of my favorite quotes of all time. I had to read it for you guys because I love that book. I've actually read it 2.5 times. If you want a book summary of The Sovereign Individual, leave me a comment down below and I will do a comprehensive review on the most impactful book that I have ever read, okay? So let's move on a little bit further. Along a similar vein, they also have a great quote where they say, in the future, one of the milestones of which by you measure your success is not by how many zeros you can add to your net worth, but whether you can structure your affairs in a way that enables you to realize full individual autonomy and independence. So the book, The Sovereign Individual, predicted that in the future, there will be 100 million sovereign individuals all around the world who actually put their wealth in cyberspace, in digital Bermuda. And they actually jump from tax haven to tax haven. And what's really interesting is this book predicted exactly what happened in 2020. That's right, in 1997, they made this prediction, predicting how the nation state might try to fight back against these digital nomads or these 100 sovereign individuals who are moving all around the world to live in these tax-friendly jurisdictions like I am right now. Now, I'm not even going to read that quote that they predicted in 1997 because the censorship over here on YouTube is still a little bit of a gray zone, okay? If for any reason our YouTube channel does get deleted, make sure you're still connected with us at Coinbeast. You can follow us on Twitter or you can sign up to our free email that goes out every Sunday. That actually contains all of the comprehensive research that we cram inside these videos that go out every Sunday. So make sure you're following us there. But let's move on and have a look at another very interesting prediction the Sovereign Individual made, and is probably one of their most controversial opinions. The Sovereign Individual predicted that what we're seeing today is actually equivalent to what we saw in the 1500s. So in the 1500s, the printing press was created, and this led to an enormous distribution as well as democratization of information all around the world. And this information that found itself into the hands of the everyday citizen essentially led to the erosion and the distrust in the big institutions such as the church and the state that were essentially a monopoly on religion and information in the 1500s. 1800s. And the book Sovereign Individual actually predicts that, yes, we are going to see an enormous explosion of information in the digital age. So they predict we're going to see all of these information technologies like digital cash, encryption, as well as 3D printed guns that is actually going to once again arm the everyday person with all of this decentralized and democratized information that is eventually going to erode trust and faith in these big institutions like the nation state. And they predict that this is going to actually lead to the fall of the nation state, and we're going to transition from the industrial age that was controlled by the nation state into the information age, okay? We can go down this rabbit hole another day or a little bit later, but just a few really interesting analogies I wanted to draw to, because obviously the printing press led to the Renaissance in the 1600s, okay? And I think we're probably on the verge of seeing a digital Renaissance, so to say. Now, I wanted to mention this prediction about the separation of money and state, as well as the printing press, because I believe this will actually help to explain whether Bitcoin is the fifth technological revolution, okay? We're going to explore this a little bit later because that's a little bit of a longer discussion, but I want to get into the final prediction for today's video because I think it's the strangest, I think it's the weirdest, but I think you guys are going to enjoy it. And that comes from the one and the only Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was easily the greatest inventor of all time. Some people make an argument that 80% of the technologies we have today were either directly or indirectly created or influenced by Tesla's amazing work in the late 1800s. And in the late 1800s, I want to highlight something really interesting Tesla said. So we can see here that Tesla essentially predicted smartphones that would enable voice and video recording as well as communication. He also predicted wireless newspapers, live streaming, video conferencing. He predicted the Internet of Things, self-driving cars, autonomous drones and robots, anything you can think of. He essentially created it. He also invented the AC air conditioner. But most interestingly, he actually believed that we could create abundant and free energy for everybody on Earth. And that was essentially what he built his entire work on. We can see here from this great quote that he says, all people everywhere should have free energy. Electric power is everywhere, present in unlimited quantities, and can drive the world's machinery without the need for oil, coal, or gas. Okay, so I'm going to just leave you guys with a little bit of a thought experiment there. Who are most incentivized to squash Tesla's ideas of abundant and free energy? I'll let you guys draw your own conclusions there, but I find it really interesting that all of Tesla's life work is actually being gatekept by the FBI. So the FBI has taken all of his papers, all of his work. I believe he has like 80 books and binders just full of documents of his writings over the years, and the government has taken it. They're not releasing that to the public, which is interesting. We're going to return to that in a minute, but I want to look at his most interesting quote. Tesla predicted that intelligent machines with minds would actually compete against each other for a maximum rate of energy delivery. This would end wars and bloodshed and bring about global peace. That is essentially Bitcoin proof of work mining. And that is the thesis that Jason Lowery has recently laid out in a book called Soft War, where he predicts that nation states in the future will actually be projecting kinetic energy upon each other through trying to accumulate more Bitcoin mining hash power, okay? Bitcoin is backed by energy. This energy actually finally reflects the real wealth of our planet, which is really interesting thesis. But I want to explore something else that Tesla said because I think it's really interesting here. We can explore that rabbit hole a little bit later, but I want to really get into the realm of speculation here. We're going to come back to the question of Satoshi in a minute, but I want to explore Tesla's really interesting theory surrounding the numbers 3, 6, and 9, because there's some strange connections to Bitcoin that I think you guys won't even believe. So he studied the pyramids in depth, okay? And he's even quoted as saying the governments and the people have lied to us for the past 5,000 years. And he was convinced that these numbers 3, 6, and 9 were representative of the fact that there were a higher dimension around us. Again, I'm not supporting any of these claims. This is really in the realm of tinfoil hat territory, but I'm just laying out Tesla's thoughts. So this is where the theory gets really interesting and really speculative. By the year 2140, it is estimated that there will be 6,930,000 Bitcoin blocks mined in history. And what's interesting about that number? It is divisible by 3, 6, and 9. Again, this dovetails into Tesla's really interesting and weird theory about the numbers 3, 6, and 9. So another really interesting coincidence is there's 144 blocks mined every single day in Bitcoin. Again, what's 144 divided by 9? It's divisible by 9. Again, interesting. Just another coincidence, but here's another one. Let's look at Bitcoin's difficulty adjustment. So Bitcoin experiences a difficulty adjustment every 2016 blocks. What's interesting about that number? Again, divisible by 9. So 2016 blocks is around 2 weeks for anyone who doesn't know, which again is awfully strange and awfully interesting. But what does this have to do with Satoshi Nakamoto, you might be asking? Well, I don't know. Okay, I want to hear your theories down below, but I just think it's really interesting that Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest minds of our time, who is obsessed with the numbers 3, 6, and 9 and believes they are connected as proof, so to say, that there is other dimensions in the world. These numbers are very interestingly linked to Bitcoin. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to leave that there. I'm not going to make a claim that Bitcoin is alien technology or anything crazy like that. I'll let you guys do the crazy speculations. Leave them in the comments down below. But I want to talk a little bit more about energy money and energy currency. I think it's going to be absolutely crazy that if Bitcoin does become energy money and energy currency in the future, the world's richest man will be anonymous, okay? That is going to be Satoshi Nakamoto. Today, I believe Satoshi holds 1 million coins, and quick little calculation on the back of the paper, napkin maths, I believe that makes Satoshi the world's 46th richest person in the planet, okay? He holds 1 million coins, Bitcoin's around 31,000 at the time of recording. That would give him somewhere around $31 billion in wealth. Absolutely incredible. And something else that's really interesting and incredible is looking at the connections between Nikola Tesla and Satoshi's early writings. If you want to learn a little bit more about all of these other strange connections with Nikola Tesla, I recommend you check out the video that I did with another anonymous figure earlier in the week. You can find that video right there. And if you want to learn more about the prophecy of 1997, the sovereign individual, I got the one and the only managing director over at Bitcoin Magazine, CK Snarks, on the podcast earlier on in the year to talk about all things sovereign individual. You guys can find that video right there. And with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next video.